Welcome back, everybody. School is now in. And Rob Tchaikovsky, you're late.
Yeah.
Whose fault is that? Oh, wait. It was my fault. I scheduled it like that. I don't expect you to tune into Oilers TV to watch the rookie game or anything on a day off.
No.
Apparently, Tyler Benson, that was his first game in action in an Oilers jersey. Was yesterday in Calgary.
Yeah, it was actually a semi-historical one. And from talking to everybody, he looked very solid out there. He took a stick in the mouth, lost a couple of teeth up front, but other than that, it was a very solid debut compared to everything that else has gone wrong for him over the course of his career. A couple of teeth is a pretty fine trade by him.
Well, and that has been the line with Tyler Benson is, he's been dealing with, a number of different injuries and conditions ever since even before the Oilers drafted him. And he's one of those players that, he was a second round pick in 2016, and he's a player that the Oilers would like to see blossom. And I guess we're going to see that here over these next 3 weeks.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that they said if he ever stays healthy, he'll be a good player, but he's just never been able to stay healthy. So, and everybody, you kind of flinch just hoping that something doesn't happen. I'm sure he's feeling the same way, although actually he said the injury stuff is behind him. He's not even thinking about it anymore, which is the mindset you're supposed to have. But, he's a high pick. If he hadn't been injured, he'd have been even higher than where the Oilers did get him. So, if the health stuff works itself out and he's just a hockey player from here on in, I think they could have a decent one in the future.
His issues have always been injuries. I think he had that sports hernia injury and then problems with the hips, and then there was an issue with when you're injured all summer and you're rehabbing all summer, you can't have a good training summer. And I think last year was his first summer where he kind of was able to train. And I saw him play with the Giants last year a couple times when he came to town. And he didn't look as fast as he did before, so I just wonder if maybe he got that out of his system, and now he's got his skating back. Because I thought he had really good hands, obviously great vision, good shot. He didn't stand out as a skater to me at the junior level, and I've always contended that to be an NHL player, you have to be a standout skater at the junior level. You can't be an average skater at the junior level, because then you'll be a below average skater at the NHL level. And he didn't stand out. His skating didn't stand out to me last year, but I think a lot of that had to do because he had the hip and the hernia and the leg problems. So from all accounts, he did look good last night or yesterday afternoon. And I think, the Oilers are counting on him now that he's healthy and ready to go. And I think he's a guy that they're kind of hoping can get in there and maybe not this year, maybe in the future, go in there and take one of those top 6 spots.
Yeah. So main camp is opening later this week. Who are you looking forward to seeing off the hop? I mean, obviously we have new additions. We want to see if players are, how they look coming off the end of their past season, good, bad, or otherwise.
Is Evan Bouchard, what are they going to do with him? Are they going to push him, maybe Justin Schultz him, or are they going to, give him another year in junior and take their time with him? And Yamamoto, too, to a lesser extent, see what he's all about as well.
The thing with Evan Bouchard, I think I'm looking forward to see what Evan Bouchard does at this level in exhibition games. And he's too good for junior. He may not be good enough for the NHL, but he's not allowed to play in the American Hockey League. Right. And then that's the dilemma and the debate that a lot of the NHL teams and the junior teams kind of discuss. If he's still junior age, so he has to go back to junior. But we saw last year how dominant he was in junior. He's not going to get any better. He's going to be as dominant. If anything, he's going to develop bad habits. And I think that's the issue right now when you're way too good for junior hockey, but just not good enough to get to the NHL level. And I could see the Oilers really weighing this. If he can handle himself, if he can handle his own, and you can spot him in and out of the lineup, maybe they'll keep him. If he's in way over his head, they'll obviously send him back to juniors. And so I'm really interested to see how he kind of handles himself and where he kind of fits in this situation, because, like I said, there is no in between for him. It's all or nothing. It's either NHL or junior, and we know what he did in junior last year. He's a dominant player. He's going to be even more dominant this year. But that if he's close enough to the Oilers, I think the Oilers do keep him around, even if it's just to put him in every now and then, right. Because you're practicing with NHLers, you're being part of the NHL. He's, like I said, you're not going to get any better. He's not going to get any better as a junior player than he already is, and I think that's one of the things that I'm interested in seeing is how big that gap is for Evan Bouchard, whether he can step in right now, or whether they feel that no, he's going to have to go back to juniors because he's not close enough to be an NHL player.
If he does make the team, it should be, like you said, as a 6-7 defenseman,
Yeah.
like playing 14 minutes a night, no pressure. Just don't do what you did with Justin Schultz and say, you're a number one shutdown guy, what he never was and still isn't now, but he's a guy that they would love to have back. I always say to myself, what would Detroit do? Like back in the day when Detroit was bringing all those players in, they would always like over-ripen them. They use the expression that keep him there well past the point where you think the guy should be up here. And then when he is coming up here, it's less overwhelming for him, and he's more mature, and he's more experienced, and he's more confident, and the odds of you getting a better player are much greater. And we've seen it, the opposite end of the spectrum with the Oilers. How many guys have they pushed in straight out of the draft that just, faded away and just weren't, what they expected of them?
I'm also interested in seeing this backup goalie, $2.5 million backup goalie.
Yeah, $2.5 million. He's got
to impress. Like if he comes in and is overwhelmed in the first few exhibition games and he doesn't look good, this is gonna look so bad on the Oilers and Peter Chiarelli, and they're spending money on a guy that they really haven't seen. He's never played here. When there were other NHL backups available at the time, probably for less money. I think that they're asking this guy to come in and challenge Cam Talbot, and I think that's probably what they gave him the money. They were convinced that he could come in and challenge Cam Talbot, but now he's going to have to do it, and now he's going to have to do it against NHL shooters, something he hasn't seen, in a smaller rink, something he hasn't seen. Sometimes that's hard on goaltenders because your angles are way different in a smaller rink than they are in a bigger rink. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts to that. Puck comes out of the corner a lot quicker than it does in international hockey. Everything's closer. The circles are closer. The hash marks are closer. The blue line is like everything seems closer, and I think that's going to be interesting to see how he kind of plays out. And I expect him. Talbot will get a lot of the playing time, and I'm interested to see how their backup goalie handles it.
And the value of it, if Talbot returns to form and he is as good as he was a couple of years ago, do you really even need to have spent that much money on a goalie who is only going to play 14, 15 games a season? So interesting. It's one of those moves that they don't have a lot of money to throw around. Ask Darnell Nurse, and they spend it on a backup. So he better be good is basically what everybody's saying. He better be worth $2.5 million.
Anders Nilsson pushed Talbot back in 2016, I guess it'd be 2 years ago, and they eventually traded him away. But he's only making $1 million a year on his contract, and here you have Koskinen at 2.5. I mean, that would be the stopgap. If you didn't need a guy like Nilsson, and you had another option. Obviously, Brossoit down in the minors to bring up. That's one thing. But how many teams want to swallow $2.5 million for Koskinen? Let's just worst case scenario, he doesn't pan out. Then what do? You already have Montoya in the minors.
Yeah,
I guess you could bring him up, right?
Yeah. Maybe Montoya is a guy that's a safety net for them down there, but. They must have seen something, or they must know something that we don't. They must have seen something that they liked, or they were convinced that this is a guy that could be a 1A goaltender as opposed to maybe a backup. And I think they've always looked to kind of ease the load on Talbot, but they've never had anyone to kind of do it. They tried last year, and it didn't work out. They couldn't do it. Then they got in a situation where, no, we have to play our starter every night. We can't give him a night off. So I think they're hoping that this guy can come in and maybe get 20, 25 games, maybe give Talbot that break, and so he's a bit fresher if they get to the playoffs next year. But you got to get to the playoffs. I think last year they were thinking about the playoffs before getting there, and I think now they realize that we got to get there before we start talking about how tired our goaltender is going into it.
Well, some of that's on McClellan too. Like he was playing Talbot when day after his wife had babies, right? Like give the guy some room, and then if you're the backup who's never playing, then they throw you in, and then you have a bad period, and then you don't play again for 8 or 9 games. It's hard to get some sort of a rhythm. So, and I'm sure that's the plan. That's the instruction. You're paying $2.5 for this guy. Play him every third game, so he can get a rhythm, and if he has a bad game, he can shake it off and get the feel of things. And that's the way you're going to have it, like a 60-66-33 split, I think was what they envision. And you're right, I think they see him as being a 1A and a guy that if Talbot doesn't have a great year and who's up soon for a new contract, this would be the guy that theoretically steps in and becomes the Edmonton Oilers #1 goalie next year and beyond. So we'll see.